Okay, let's take a look at an exam question together. This scenario, I will have a link to it in the description. I won't read through all of that because it'll take too long. But what I'm going to do is scroll down to some questions. I'm going to take this one, task 5, safety culture. Asking us to comment on the current health and safety culture in the company. And it's asking us also to base it on the scenario only. So let's scroll back up to the scenario. And what I'm going to do is basically just highlight anything that I think would provide some useful information for answering this question. So we can, if it says comment on, and it doesn't specify negative or positive, well, we can treat it as an open thing, in that we can comment on both negative aspects and positive aspects as well. So we're not really constrained here, which is good because we've got 15. We've got to get 15 of them. So it's good that we don't have to focus on either good or bad or positive and negative. We can just highlight whatever we think is relevant to, or giving us any sort of indication as to what the culture is. Opening hours of the office are flexible. So that's something that I think is relevant. Contracts manager has a reputation for being irritable. Worth highlighting. Office building is in a business park, blah, blah, blah. Vehicles are parked across existing cars. No one has assessed the risks in the car park. Recently, a near miss occurred. There was a distracted construction worker. Angry exchange. When you talk informally with some of the workers, they describe previous near misses. Do you see what I'm doing? It's pretty simple and straightforward. Not really thinking about it too much. Just going through the scenario. Whenever my eyes hit something as I'm scanning it that looks like it's relevant to the question, which, just as a reminder, is to comment on the current health and safety culture. So when anything jumps out at me, I'm going to highlight. So I won't carry on highlighting the whole scenario because I think you've got the idea. But what's basically going to happen is that by the end of the scenario, there's going to be lots of highlights on the page, which is exactly what you want. That's basically your raw material for answering the question. Don't go to your textbook and read up on health and safety culture and think that all the stuff that you're reading in your textbook about health and safety culture is going to really be that useful to you, because it won't, because it's saying it's got to be based on the scenario only. Okay, this is where a lot of mistakes get made, is that people put in just kind of like a theory in their answers and they don't even really make reference to the scenario. But anyway, what I want to stress in this video is the fact that in pretty much most of the previous videos that I've done about answering NEBOSH open book exam questions, I've only ever dealt with sort of one question at a time. But obviously you guys are going to be dealing with, on exam day, you've got several questions to answer. What you're going to need to do is, when it comes on to a different question, for example, we've been focusing on question 5, which is about health and safety culture. Task 4 is going to be about, what is it about? Improving formal consultation. So what formal meetings could you plan that are likely to help improve consultation in the workplace? Now, that's going to produce, different highlights. Some of them will be different anyway. Some of the information from the scenario might be useful for both questions, and therefore you'd be putting highlights on top of highlights or overlapping highlights. It can get messy pretty quickly, which is something that's never really come up before in my videos, because like I say, I've always done it like taking one question in isolation and then tackling that question, and then the next video will be another question. But what I want to suggest to you on exam day is to print out the scenarios. It'll be obviously the same scenario, but multiple printouts of that one scenario, such that what you can do is basically make your highlights specific to the task that you happen to be working on at any given time on exam day. Because what you're inevitably going to want to do is come back to questions later on in the day when you've already had your initial attempt at answering the question. You've gotten to a point where you don't think there's much more that you can say, or you need time to think about a particular question, so you set it aside, you work on another question for a little while, but then you come back to a previous question that you've attempted and see if you can make it better, or if more ideas come to you. And therein, I think, lies the problem if you're only dealing with one scenario printout, is that if you've made no highlights on it, you're either going to have to reread it, rescan it, which is very laborious. But if you go back and you pick up a scenario printout that you've previously already made your highlights on for that particular question, it makes it much easier on you then to just reread those highlights and see if there are any more highlights that you want to make, see if the highlights that you already have made are still relevant. So I think what I would do on exam day is, once I've got access to the exam, see how many questions there are. And if there are 8 questions, for example, or 8 tasks divided into sub-questions, I'd basically advise printing out 8 separate scenario printouts, and then obviously staple them together and arrange them. I'd probably have them on the windowsill here if it was me. I'd want them all in a nice neat row with a big black marker, task 1 at the top of the printout that is relevant to task 1, task 2 on the printout that is relevant to task 2, and so on and so forth. That way, on exam day, when I'm working through the questions, I can have question 1 on my mind and go through, pick up the scenario printout for task 1, make my highlights, make my notes in the margins, have ideas as I think through the question of things that I could include in my answer, and basically annotate that whole printout really well and thoroughly, but specific to task 1. Do the same for task 2. And do the same for all of them. And then that way there's no sort of cross-contamination between highlights, and you don't necessarily have to keep reading and rereading the scenario from scratch every single time you want to go back to a question and remind yourself of what the relevant aspects from the scenario are with regards to that question. All the highlights will already be there, and you just can kind of pick up where you left off earlier. And I think that would make it just it would make the process much smoother and easier for you. That's the approach that I would take. So I hope that has been somewhat useful. I think some of you are no doubt already doing some version of that, but I wouldn't mind betting that some of you aren't and have hopefully got some value from the video. But as usual, if you have got your exam coming up, very best of luck with it, and I'll see you in the next video.